Most honest Americans believe that following along with the rules and regulations are a cost to living in a free society. The ancestral DNA from our departure from the British Empire has left us with some desire for representation as well as a resulting good government. Aspirations to that goal are noble, and in many cases one of the principal reasons that the United States has enjoyed an unmatched life of liberty and freedom since its founding. Certainly, as our population has increased and technology has changed the way we live, our adaptations have been projected onto government. The society of farmers and pioneers that could create a life and a living from the land or the work of their hands changed to become a fast-paced technological civilization that used efficiency to its greatest degree to achieve that same sense of life and living. Along the way, conflicts over property or the use of technology or industry created incongruent uses between parties. The instinct that the people of this nation had was to democratize the process and allow the governments to be the arbiters of the solutions. Government created helpful methods to address these conflicts and for the most part help people live in relative peace within their disputes. But all of this creative problem solving had a darker side to it. With each new rule or solution, governments also felt the need to build in enforcement mechanisms and elevate their preemptive powers, making sure that everything that happened within the democratic process was controlled by their doing. The governments used laws to control the outcomes of their citizenry. Zoning laws were used to segregate races in towns and neighborhoods. Growth policies and development ensured through an underhanded and veiled mechanism that the poor were excluded from certain areas. With each new rule came a new bureaucrat and a new agency. It created a self-perpetuating cycle that allowed the rule makers to build their agency empires, then suggest more rules to be passed so that more people could help enforce the rules they were making. And quickly, a cancerous tumor upon good government developed. It has grown so large that it affects every aspect of the American life. And, to the point at which it was once used to solve differences amongst neighbors, it has created a more contentious situation that is void of any democratic process. Neighborhood meetings or congressional hearings are a setup for theater and conflict. All parties involved in those settings are left feeling less than heard and in worse discord than had they been left to resolve the issues for themselves. It has become a prison of despair for the people. Their voices are negligible and dismissed by the more erudite experts in the room, and the agency grows more powerful with each passing dispute. There are a multitude of people and policies to blame for this, but the dark brilliance of the state is that no matter who you find culpable, the state can suffer those attacks because they are faceless and unelected. Staff drives every decision from the smallest portions of city government all the way to the presidency. A victory in one area only leads to an empowerment of another, but the results are always the same, the inescapable escalator to total control over the people. There's an old parable by Franz Kafka about a man who is brought to the gate of the law, and through either misunderstanding or willful obedience, stops himself from entering. This parable is one that shows our self-induced destruction and our inability to believe in the power of the individual. Our obedience is our jailkeeper. Before the law sits a gatekeeper. To this gatekeeper comes a man from the country who asks to gain entry into the law. But the gatekeeper says that he cannot grant him entry at the moment. The man thinks about it and then asks if he will be allowed to come in later. "It is possible," says the gatekeeper, "but not now." At the moment, the gate to the law stands open, as always, and the gatekeeper walks to the side, so the man bends over in order to see through the gate and into the inside. When the gatekeeper notices that, he laughs and says, "If it tempts you so much, try it in spite of my prohibition. But take note, I am powerful, and I am only the most lowly gatekeeper. But from room to room stand gatekeepers, each more powerful than the other. I can't endure even one glimpse of the third." The man from the country has not expected such difficulties. The law should always be accessible to everyone, he thinks. But as he now looks more closely at the gatekeeper in his fur coat, and his large pointed nose, and his long, thin, black tartar's beard, he decides that it would be better to wait until he gets permission to go inside. The gatekeeper gives him a stool and allows him to sit down at the side of the front of the gate. There he sits for days and years. He makes many attempts to be let in, and he wears the gatekeeper out with his requests. The gatekeeper often interrogates him briefly, questioning him about his homeland and many other things, but they are indifferent questions, the kind great men put, and at the end he always tells him once more that he cannot let him inside yet. The man, who has equipped himself with many things for his journey, spends everything, no matter how valuable, to win over the gatekeeper. The latter takes it all, but as he does so, says, "I am taking this only so that you do not think you have failed to do anything." During the many, many years, the man observes the gatekeeper almost continuously. He forgets the other gatekeepers, and this one seems to him the only obstacle for entry into the law. He curses the unlucky circumstance in the first years thoughtlessly and out loud later as he grows old. He still mumbles to himself. He becomes childish, and since in the long years studying the gatekeeper, he has come to know the fleas in his fur collar. He even asks the fleas to help him persuade the gatekeeper. Finally, his eyesight grows weak, and he does not know whether things are really darker around him or whether his eyes are merely deceiving him. But he recognizes now in the darkness an illumination which breaks inextinguishably out of the gateway to the law. Now he no longer has much time to live. Before his death, he gathers in his head all the experiences of the entire time up into one question which has not been yet put to the gatekeeper. He waves to him. Since he can no longer lift up his stiffening body, the gatekeeper has to bend way down to him, for the great difference has changed things to the disadvantage of the man. "What do you still want to know then?" asks the gatekeeper. "You are insatiable." "Everyone strives after the law," says the man. "So how is it that in these many years no one except me has requested entry?" The gatekeeper sees that the man is already dying, and in order to reach his diminishing sense of hearing, he shouts at him, "Here no one else can gain entry, since this entrance was assigned only to you. I'm going to close it now." America has dutifully taken its place as the man from the country, who sits and rots, waiting for permission to enter into the land that should be accessible to all. This world we have created, where someone else, who is unelected and unaccountable, is always in charge of our destiny, has to be addressed. Politics is our least violent way to do it, but we have to find people who understand what has been done to us, and who believe that their existence is a fast and aggressive cancer treatment that relies heavily upon a deep understanding of what the actual cancer is. We've watched as small government rhetoric wins election after election, and yet our actual reality is that government never stops growing. We spend more, have more aggression to manage an empire, and are engulfed by endless rules and regulations through the bureaucrats. People insist that the best person for the job is someone who has a bulldog personality or the ability to govern because of their involvement in government. I think the real solution lies within the knowledge of how poisonous and insidious the system has become. They have to understand how the law works so they can use it against the law dictators. They have to understand that corporations have giant incentives to feed this beast for their benefit. They need to understand that re-democratizing the process and eliminating the abusive relationship is the only way out from under this tyranny without violence and aggression. We can no longer curse our unlucky circumstances or wait for permissions to move to liberty. We have a chance to shine light on our own faults, our own failures, to love a life and society oriented to liberty. We can change the trajectory of a dying republic if we realize that we have made up the gatekeepers who keep us imprisoned by our own hesitancy to speak up and change things.